All right. Well, look, Steph, thank you so much for coming. As mentioned in the intro, games are an informal industry, but while the vibes may be casual, the standards are not. Steph Ryan, HR lead at Sledgehammer Australia, is going to open this summit with a talk on professional behavior and standards and why pure talent is only going to get you so far. Steph, the virtual floor is yours. Let me know how you go.
Thank you. I'm just not seeing a share. Oh, there's my share option.
Yeah.
Hiding
Right.
down the
I'll
bottom.
say one more thing regarding the Q&A. Let's do this here in the main stage chat. So no need to go anywhere else. We're just going to do this right here. And yeah, well, I'm going to excuse myself. And Steph, over to you.
Awesome. Just before you go, all good on, you can see my screen? Oh,
Yes, all good.
Presentation?
Excellent.
Excellent.
All right, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jens, for the introduction. So I'm Steph Ryan. I am in HR in the games industry, and a big part of my role is sitting close to things like hiring, performance, promotions, and the kind of people issues that shape whether or not someone is seen as easy to work with and easy to trust. And what I want to talk today about is not polish for its own sake with professional behavior, but the everyday behavior signals that shape how people experience you at work, especially in an industry like games where the vibes can feel casual, but the workplace expectations are still very real. Before we get into examples, I just want to start with a core idea that sits beneath this whole session, and that's most professionalism issues are not about bad intent. They are generally about misreading the room. So with that, I will get on to our first slide. Hopefully all my transitions work. Bear with me. Okay. Excellent. We've got progress. So why this matters. So as I mentioned, today is really about behavior signals. In the first few years of your career, people generally don't know you well yet. So your behavior tends to carry more weight. They'll make decisions about your judgment, ability to trust you, and credibility long before anyone may give you formal feedback. And a lot of talented people don't hit barriers because they lack skill. They hit barriers because people are unsure of how they will show up. And so the hard part of this is that most of these decisions are quiet, and you may not be told this is why you weren't included, trusted, or recommended for something. So I've spoken a bit about behaviors being a signal. Professionalism is a behavior. So it definitely is not a personality type. I was not born or raised knowing what professionalism was. It was a skill that I learned. And what that skill is your ability to read context and adjust. So it's noticing the room, noticing the stakes, and understanding that what people experience from you. And it matters way more than what you meant privately. People only see the outside, not all the internals. So it's less about the polish and more about the signal you're sending with your behavior. Awareness is a key part of this. So it tells people you can read context. So, for example, if a senior leader joins a casual chat, can you adjust appropriately? Respect tells people you value others. So, do you treat production, IT, QA, and admin staff with the same baseline respect that designers, engineers, or other perceived higher stakes roles receive? Reliability is your ability to follow through consistently and tells people that they can trust you. So, for example, if you own an action after a meeting, do you follow through on that? Do people trust it will actually happen? And then finally, I've already mentioned this, but intent versus impact. reminds us that good intentions do not cancel out that poor impact. So an example is if a joke misses or a comment lands badly, what's your next step? Do you try to repair the situation, defend your comment or bad joke, or ignore it and pretend it didn't happen? Either way, your choice in how you act in that situation can make it better or worse. So some of our everyday signals are the small things that people notice quickly, even if someone might not say it out loud. An example is how you show up in shared spaces, particularly things like meetings or common areas. I've had some examples in my own career or been provided some from others. Things like eating during presentations, that's including you being the presenter, visibly multitasking during meetings, or treating a work meeting like a private chat, so having a secondary chat when others are presenting, can all signal a lack of awareness and also a lack of respect. Another example is treating the workplace or common areas like your home, remembering we all have different standards. So putting feet on desk, not tidying up after yourself, these also signal a lack of awareness and respect. Our language also matters a lot more than people realize. Words can feel neutral to you and still land badly for someone else. So it is important to understand um, how you use words and whether or not they're appropriate for the context you're in. And then humor and context are really important and similar to that language piece. It's not about never joking. It's more about knowing your audience and the context you're in. Um, Again, none of this is about judging people harshly. It's just understanding the signals that our behavior sends in a professional space. Um, these things aren't always wrong as well. It's really the context that matters. Something can be fine in a casual team moment and then not fine in a more higher stakes presentation, mixed group, or a work connecting setting outside of your core group. Again, the real skill is reading the room and adjusting appropriately. So we mentioned the casual vibe, and that does not equal casual standards. So there can be a lot of blurred lines in the games industry. For many of you, this may not just be your chosen career, but also be where you find your friends, with your social circle, and it's where your passion lies. Games can feel very social, creative, and informal. Probably part of the reason why you want to be part of the games industry and what may have attracted you to it. But informal does not mean consequence free. The same things that make the industry cool can also be its weakness, and it can cause issues if it's overemphasized or left unchecked. Essentially, if a space is connected to work, professional standards still do apply. But my rule of thumb for when we're maybe in a casual workplace, not sure if we're crossing any lines, is if a senior leader, a hiring manager, or an external partner join the space right now, would this still feel okay? It's just a really easy way to kind of remind yourself of, would I do this if the stakes were higher? So the impact, I've spoken a bit about its impact versus intent. And when people hear professional behavior, they sometimes assume this is mainly about rules and image. And it does have that aspect to it. But the big thing is the impact, including the impact on yourself. So, firstly, it can affect you. As I mentioned earlier in your career, behavior shapes and the trust you have trusted with others, and it also can impact the opportunities you get offered very quickly. People will make those quiet decisions like, would I put this person in front of a senior stakeholder, trust them with something sensitive, or want them in a high stakes conversation? The second, it affects other people. So small behavior choices can change whether someone feels respected, included, or safe to contribute. Oh, went a bit too quick on that one. Um, And if someone's already decided whether they want to speak up, your behavior can influence whether or not that feels safe for them to do so and lowers the risk of them having that conversation with you, or it could raise the risk, make them feel like maybe they wouldn't be comfortable addressing things with you, depending on good general behavior signals. The third impact isn't as obvious, especially on an individual level, but it affects the industry. So games culture is not built by one big statement, policy, or one big employer. It's built interaction by interaction, meeting by meeting, and team by team. And eventually that makes up the games culture. It's still quite a young industry compared to a lot of others out there. And the standards people experience day to day are what become the culture. So we all have the ability to make the culture better or worse ourselves through our own choices. So this isn't just about avoiding awkward moments. It's really about shaping the trust, safety, and kind of industry people want to not just join, but also want to stay in. So self-accountability is the one that we've got the most amount of ownership over. And a useful question could be, what story is my behavior telling about me, especially when something doesn't go well? So if you're early in your career, when again, the goal is not perfection or putting on an experienced facade, you're going to misread things sometimes. You're going to make mistakes. This is normal. And honestly, it's part of how you learn the skill. I myself, have had experiences where I wasn't as professional as I wanted to be there. What matters next is how you recover. The people who build trust passes are usually not the people who never get it wrong. They're the people who notice, adjust, and repair quickly instead of getting defensive. And it can be really hard to get into that pattern. This is where that mindset really matters. A fixed mindset, if you are familiar with fixed versus growth mindset, is where we hear feedback as a threat to identity, whereas a growth mindset leaves room for the possibility that there's something we can learn from the experience, even if we don't like hearing it in the moment. When we receive unexpected feedback, a lot of us have that instinctive reaction to be defensive. We might rationalize why we said or did something, withdraw, argue, or focus on proving your intent or our intent. And again, it's very human, but it usually doesn't help us learn much or build a great relationship with the person who's giving us feedback. Again, doesn't mean you have to agree with every piece of feedback immediately. It means being open enough to pause, reflect, and ask yourself whether there's something valuable in it. It's especially useful when you're less experienced, as you will often get better at this over time. A lot of growth in early career is not just building your technical skills, it's building the ability to hear feedback, regulate your first reaction, and use it to improve. Sometimes the hardest part of professionalism is not knowing the rule of how we receive feedback. And, we might hear that something that we said or did not land how we thought it would. Some of the self-growth tips that I would suggest are, or mindset mantras to go through are: feedback gives me information I can use, often in blind spots that I'm not aware of. I do not have to respond perfectly to respond well. Improvement takes time, and small adjustments still count. So, talked a bit about holding ourselves accountable, and then there's holding others accountable, because it's not just our professional behavior, it's others. So holding others accountable does not mean policing everyone or escalating every uncomfortable moment. Usually the most effective version is a low drama, private, calm, and specific chat. A small redirect early often can prevent a bigger issue later. Example of that might be, hey, maybe not here, or I don't think that landed how you meant it. Let's keep this professional. Or a simple, I don't think that's okay. it may feel big for you, but the more we do this, the more comfortable we can get with that. I do really want to be clear, though, that you do not owe a correction if you do not feel safe to do so. Um, Examples are if there's a power imbalance, a pattern of behavior that indicates you don't have safety, or something that feels risky, use your judgment. Sometimes the right move is to step back, document it, or raise it through a safer channel if you have them available to you. All of these are examples of intervention, and they can be direct or indirect. But in general, as I mentioned, culture is shaped by what gets corrected and what gets ignored. When we interview, we do not only do we reduce the amount of inappropriate behavior that we experience or distress for the person affected, which may not be you, we build that strong culture of respect, safety, and support. A common phrase that I've spoken to Jens about as well is the behavior you walk past is often the behavior we learn to accept. So, like I mentioned, if you see it, sometimes it is easier just to call it out at the time. So what does good look like? Because we've spoken a bit about what good might not look like. So it doesn't mean being soft, formal, or fake. It's being intentional. So it's having good judgment, which includes considering the consequences of one's decisions, thinking before acting and speaking, and having the tools to make good decisions in a variety of situations based on the information available to you. Good communication is usually very simple, clear, direct, and aware of the context. An example, again, is when you disagree with feedback from maybe a lead or a manager. So just going back to an unhelpful version would be getting visibly defensive, stating immediately why the feedback is unfair, debating every detail in the moment, and leaving the conversation feeling frustrated without clarity on those expectations. Whereas a more direct context-aware version may sound like, thanks, I may need a minute to process that as I want to understand it properly. Can you give me one or two specific examples and what that would have looked like? This works well because you're being clear, you're not pretending to fully agree if you don't, especially if you're hearing this for the first time. You're being direct, you're asking for what you need. You're being context aware because you're showing you understand this is a work conversation and not a personal argument. So I am getting to a bit of an interactive, and I haven't had a lot of skill with Discord. So straight up, I will see how we go with the poll function. But we want to do a bit of a signal check. So hopefully the pattern is clear. Most of this is not about rigid rules, it's about context. So I want to give a couple of scenarios and ask for your thoughts on what's more okay, less okay, or it depends. And go from there. So, Jens, do you have the poll set up, or are we just going to do it in the chat?
Let's just do it in the
Okay.
chat. That's the easiest. So just put it in the chat in the main stage chat right here, and then people can vote.
Excellent. Okay, so I've got a thumbs up, thumbs down, and question mark. I hope they're all emojis available. I'm going to write this in because it doesn't let me copy and pasting.
All right, let me know where you go. Otherwise, I'd be happy to do it on your behalf.
Awesome. Okay, dropped in scenario 1, eating during a team meeting. I'll give everyone about 30 seconds to respond. Getting unpopular. Okay, I think we'll end the voting here. It's overwhelmingly seen as not okay or less okay. And the likely answer is it depends. I think most of the time it would be a no and you'd want to avoid it. If it's an informal working session and everyone's doing the same thing, maybe it's over lunch, that is usually more okay. If someone's presenting or it reads as distracted or disengaged, it becomes less okay, which most people have responded to, because it does signal something about awareness and respect for space. Again, there can be scenarios where that's more okay, but it depends. It's likely the answer with leaning towards more or less okay. Okay, I'm gonna add it in scenario 2. Hopefully,
Steph, I'll put that in.
oh,
I'll put it in the chat. So it is making a joke in the work chat. There you go. Vote away. Thumbs up, more okay. Thumbs down, less okay. Question mark, it depends.
much easier when Jens is doing it for me. Thanks, Jens.
I am to please.
Okay. I think we've got most people responding now. So I think the question the question mark answers, doesn't matter if it's grey or red, are pretty spot on. Humor does not automatically mean it's unprofessional. The question is who is in the space, how well you know them, and whether the joke makes the room feel more comfortable or less safe. Again, it depends on the audience and the context, and it's important to remember that a lot can be lost in text, and the intent is even harder to know when we're maybe via Slack or Discord or email. So the impact is the most important thing when you're thinking of something. Is I would just always caution, think of, could this be read another way? Because you know how you intend it, but someone who might not know you may read it very differently. Okay.
Next one. All right, this one. Yeah. Anyway, see for yourself. 3, calling women females in a professional conversation.
Getting a lot of glad this one's not divisive. And no grey question mark in this one. Okay, I think pretty much got our answer on this one. So yes, I would say that the thumbs down less okay with the red flags is aligned with my experience. The likely answer is it's not okay. What I will flag, or it's probably the wrong term, but some people may mean it in a more neutral way. For example, if English is not their first language, they may not understand the context. But in professional settings, many people do experience it as distancing or dehumanizing, especially if they are in the minority in the room. I, for one, have been in many conversations where I may be the only female or one of a few. So if you're unsure, the safer option is usually just to use the language people use for themselves. But yeah, pretty unnecessary most of the time I've seen in there, and absolutely agree with that. And so we ready for scenario 4?
We sure are. Number 4, swearing in a meeting.
Give it a little bit more. So we have mostly it's less okay and some with it depends. And I would say that that's probably where it does sit. Um, in some teams, mild swearing can be normal and does not raise a concern. That doesn't necessarily, there's a lot of context in our work environment. I've worked in industries that are a lot more blue collar, for example, where this would, eyelid would not be back. And then when we're in other conversations, especially if you work with overseas partners where swearing is a lot less common. So in a mixed group, formal setting, meeting with leaders or external people, it can be read as poor judgment. Casual culture, yeah, does not remove those professional standards. So I would always say be aware and cognizant of your use of language. It's not always unprofessional, depending on the context, but definitely when you're in more formal settings or with people you don't know, I would not start the conversation with it. That's for sure. Okay. Scenario 5.
All right, last one. Giving someone a quiet, maybe not here redirect.
Okay. I think I'm just noticing we're coming up to the time. So, yes, so we've got okay, crying face, and a couple of it depends. So the likely answer is it's more okay. As I mentioned, a calm, low drama redirect is often a more professional move. It generally protects the space without escalating, and it reinforces that the culture is shaped by what gets corrected as well as what gets ignored. Especially if you can see it's maybe affecting someone else, and you're the person in the situation just witnessing it. It can kind of stop it from escalating further. I did want to end the section with something a bit more interactive because as I can see in the chat, and I think I've reiterated 10,000 times during this conversation, context is key. It's usually not about memorizing a list of rules. It's about reading the room, and standards do shift as well. I'd say the standards that I started in my career are, much more advanced 15 years later. Now that I say 15 years, that makes me feel bad. Key takeaways. Talent opens doors, but behavior keeps them open. So that's probably the key part that I'd say. And Jens, I don't know if I've kind of taken all the time up, but if not, I think I'll be around in the Ask Me Anything.
Yeah, look, you will definitely be in the industry AMA because the next talk is going to start in 4 minutes. I mean, look, if maybe you can allow one question, and then if anyone else has anything they want to ask, they can keep that in the back of their minds and ask it in the chat during the lunch break, which starts at 12:30. So if anyone wants to maybe put something in the chat, we're going to go for one question, and then we're going to talk about the art of creative collaboration with James from Chaos Theory.
And thank you all for having me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I wonder if the context is such that I can make a joke while swearing, but maybe not. All right. Look, Jamie is asking a question because Jamie is first here. How would you handle a situation where a very close friend of yours, who is also a work colleague, is starting to cross the line with another person? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much nuance in this one, and I would say that I'm going to take it from a very personal view. I try to have friends that will tell me when I'm about to cross a line, or do things that would help protect me long term as well. How you do it will depend a lot about your friendship and how open it is, and what that line is crossing. Like, there's probably a lot of more information, and I would suggest not sharing it here. But it will depend on a lot. If it was me, I'd probably say something. I'd be very careful in how I do it, especially when it's work. Depending on your workplace as well, if you don't feel comfortable having that conversation directly, and this may, again, feel very not what you want to do, but if they do have anonymous reporting or a safer way, if that's something, but that might over-escalate as well. So I would say the first point would be a quiet chat with your mate, and try and let them know that it's not looking okay to you, and hopefully they can reflect and avoid escalating it.
All right. Well, look, thank you so much,
That's helpful.
Steph. Looking at the time, we will have to kick off with the second talk very, very soon. Steph, thank you again so much for doing this. I'm looking forward to also having you in the AMA during the lunch break. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and your comments. So we'll see you then.